Do you see this? This leaf is attacking me. It is officially spring and almost summer. And do you want to know how I know that? Not only because my calendar says so, but because the landscapers are outside. If you guys have been around my channel for about a year, more than a year, you know that every spring and every summer, every time I film, my neighbors' landscapers decide to show up. I specifically tried to get up early today because I knew that they often come on Wednesdays, and today is Wednesday that I'm filming this, and I was like, oh, okay, the landscapers are coming, but they usually come in the afternoon, so I'm gonna wake up early. Anyway, this relates to spring, and so does my video, so if you hear a dull humming in the background, those are the landscapers. I hope that they add to the ambiance of springtime, because I am here to talk to you guys about some spring book recommendations, and I love spring. It is my favorite season, and I love reading seasonally. So I did a spring book recommendations a year ago, and I tried to not recommend any books that I recommended in that video. So if you want even more spring book recommendations and you missed last year's video has some of my all-time favorite springtime books that I won't be mentioning in this video. So if you want more recommendations, I will link that video as well. But anyway, let's get started talking about these amazing books that are perfect for spring. I'm kind of in denial that they're outside right now. Anyway, the first books I want to tell you about are the books I am currently reading, and I think they all fit perfectly into the spring season because, like I said, I love reading seasonally, and so all the books I'm currently reading are very spring. So, the first one I'm reading for my book club, the Well-Read Book Club, which I host on Fable. I also host Game of Tomes on Fable, which is another book club I'll be talking about. If you want to join the book clubs, you can join for free on Fable, and there's a link in the description. I got a few people asking me, how can you join? All you have to do is click the link in the description and join us on Fable and talk in the discussions. That's really it. It's quite simple and hopefully easy and fun. Anyway, the first book I want to tell you about that I am reading for the Well-Read Book Club in May is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. This is my final unread Jane Austen novel, and I am so thrilled to be reading it, so thrilled to be reading it with everyone in the book club, and I am already 12 chapters in, and I am really, really loving this book. And to associate it with spring, the nature descriptions and just the way that Jane Austen is talking about the setting and just the English countryside, the beautiful Mansfield Park. There's another estate that they go to that's also really beautiful, and they wander around the gardens. Just from the beginning of the book, it already feels very springtime and perfect for this time of year, so that's why I wanted to mention it, because I'm only 12 chapters in, but this already feels like such a wonderful springtime read. I am really enjoying the character of Fanny Price. She is the main character that we're following. Fanny Price is very different from Emma in Emma and Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice, because those two characters are very outspoken and strong-minded and strong-willed and kind of sarcastic and witty and clever. And Fanny, she's very meek and quiet and obedient, and she doesn't really have much of a voice in terms of dialogue, but also just in general. She's surrounded by a lot of people like Jane Eyre in Jane Eyre. Fanny's reminding me a lot of Jane Eyre because she's kind of being drowned out by the other voices around her, and I can already tell that she's going to hopefully, I hope, come into her own and find her voice, and I'm really loving following her character. And I feel like the brilliant thing that Jane Austen does is she shows us things about Fanny and about the other people in the book through not only what is said, but what is unsaid. And that is something that I think is so exquisite and hard to do as a writer, and I really am just loving everything about this book so far, which is wonderful because I didn't know how I would feel about it. A lot of people say that this is their least favorite Jane Austen novel, but I have heard from quite a few of you on my recent videos saying that you love this book, so I'm really happy to say that I'm loving it, and I just can't wait to keep reading it, and I do think it's perfect for spring. Then the other book that we are reading for the Game of Tomes book club on Fable, which again, there's a link in the description if you want to join, that is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I don't know why, but I always associate John Steinbeck with spring and summer as well. I do think that his novels fit really well into those seasons, spring and summer, but East of Eden, I think it's the stunning, stunning, stunning descriptions of the scenery and the setting. This is set in California in the Salinas Valley. We are also following these characters that are very passionate about farming and creating gardens. There's a lot of references and allusions to the Garden of Eden, and I just think that this is such a vivid and descriptive book that I feel like that's something I really look for in spring and summer, especially when the writer is so gifted like John Steinbeck is in describing nature. The way that he describes the different flowers and plants and trees and just the scenery and setting in general. This book also has one of the most stunning opening chapters and descriptions of the setting. It really just transports you right into the story. Anyway, I just want to say that I'm loving this book so much, and I think it really is perfect for this time of year. The next book that I'm currently reading, I still have only read the first 2 chapters, but I'm going to obviously continue reading it because I'm currently reading it, and that is The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. This book I wanted to start and read in April, but I didn't have the time, so I started it on April 30th, and I'm going to... I started it in April, which makes my heart happy, but now I will continue to read it in May. This is about these English women that are tired of the dreary and cold and rainy English weather, and they go and stay for the month of April in a medieval Italian castle. I haven't gotten to the Italian castle part yet. Elizabeth Arnim is setting the scene. I'm really enjoying this. I love Elizabeth Arnim's writing style. I read another book by Elizabeth von Arnim, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it as much as I'm loving this one. So I just thought I would put that out there, but loving this and highly recommend picking it up. If you didn't in April, then possibly in May, like I'm doing. The next book I want to recommend I read last year, and I read it throughout spring and summer, and it was such a wonderful collection, and that is Enid Blyton's Nature Stories. So I didn't grow up reading Enid Blyton's work. My husband actually grew up reading the Famous Five series, and he loved those books. He always talks about them even today, and he wants to reread them. But I didn't grow up reading Enid Blyton, and last year it was my first time experiencing Enid Blyton's writing. As you can see from the cover, it is 30 stories, and we are following different human characters as well as animal characters, and the back is just so adorable. It says, "Explore the great outdoors with the world's best-loved storyteller. Meet the crab looking for a new shell and the bat who befriends a dormouse. Travel from forest to riverbank, back garden to beach in this wonderful collection of stories that celebrate the natural world around us." And I am an advocate for being an adult and reading stories for children because we need to nurture the children in ourselves, and I love reading middle grade. This is just such a wonderful collection. It has a lot of moral life lessons in it, which I do love, and I just feel like it's so sweet and perfect for this time of year. You could really tell that Enid Blyton absolutely loved nature and animals and the great outdoors, so I cannot recommend this little collection enough. Well, it's not even that little. I mean, 30 stories, that's a good amount, but I loved reading this last year throughout spring and summer, and I really can't recommend it enough. It is wonderful. Another author that I always associate with the springtime, E.M. Forster. So I always recommend reading A Room with a View, which I have right here. So I always recommend reading A Room with a View in spring, but I recommended this last year, so I don't want to recommend it again, but I do recommend just any E.M. Forster book in the springtime. I just feel like they are perfect to be read in spring. Here I have Where Angels Fear to Tread. This also has more like spring and summer vibes, so they're actually both set in Italy, partially set in Italy. This is probably my favorite E.M. Forster novel ever, and I can't recommend it enough, but I don't want to talk about it too much because I recommended it last year, and I do talk about it quite a lot because it's one of my favorite books ever. This one I really, really enjoyed, but I just didn't love it as much as this one, but I still recommend it. E.M. Forster, he not only writes such beautiful descriptions and stories as a whole, but the way that he explores class and the different cultures. He writes about human relationships so beautifully and authentically, and I think he's just such a fantastic writer. I love all of his work. I'm hoping to read A Passage to India this summer potentially, and because that's on my 2025 TBR, and I'm really looking forward to reading another new E.M. Forster book because, like I said, he's one of my favorite authors. The next book I want to tell you about, I just finished reading and I loved it, and that is The Garden Against Time: In Search of a Common Paradise by Olivia Lang. I read this physically and I also listened to the audiobook because Olivia Lang narrates it herself, and she did such an amazing job. I love reading books, especially nonfiction, narrated by the author. And this is about Olivia Lang restoring a garden in Suffolk in England, and then it leads her to exploring gardening as a whole. She explores it historically. She also explores it in terms of in literature. She makes a lot of literary references to Paradise Lost and The Secret Garden and so many other different poets and writers and artists. She explores the life of John Clare, the poet. She explores the life of William Morris, the artist and gardener, and I am an artist. I love gardening, and I also love literary history. And so this book was an absolute gem. I loved every moment of it, and if you love gardening, the great outdoors, flowers, literature, poetry, art, history, you will love this book. It is so many things all at once, and I loved every single aspect of this book. So glad that I read it because I felt like it was perfect for this time of year. I love reading nature nonfiction in the springtime, and this was an absolute gem. The landscapers are back. As I was saying, the next book is another amazing nature nonfiction book from one of my favorite writers, and that is Landmarks by Robert McFarland. I have read a lot of Robert McFarland's books now, and I think that this is one of the best books to start with. If you are new to his writing, if you are new to nature nonfiction, I think this is just the perfect book for you. And of course, it is perfect for spring because this book is all about Robert McFarland's love and appreciation for nature and landmarks and plants and animals. And this is not only a nonfiction book about Robert McFarland's own experiences, but it's also part glossary where he kind of takes you outside. It almost feels like he's taking you by the hand and telling you about the world around you. I remember I was listening to this as an audiobook and partially physically reading it. I was listening to it on a walk one day, and I went into this wooded area in my neighborhood, and I was looking up at the trees, and I was looking at all the trees above me, and right as I did that, he defined the term overstory, and an overstory is the layer of leaves and the canopy of leaves and branches that you see when you look up when you're standing under a tree. And it felt like the most wonderful moment because I was not only learning about this term, but I was seeing it as I was hearing it. So as you can see throughout the book, we have not only different chapters on different topics, but also glossaries. So as you can see, these are terms which relate to bays, channels, and inlets. And throughout the book, we have his own writing, but also the different glossaries. It's not only perfect for this time of year, but it's perfect if you want to get into nature nonfiction, or if you really love nature nonfiction and you haven't read it, then this is a must read. The next book I want to recommend to you is from another one of my favorite authors who I also associate with spring and summer, and that is Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. I also really want to recommend For Whom the Bell Tolls. For some reason, I can't find my copy of this book, so I will put a picture up. For Whom the Bell Tolls takes place in late May in 1937, and so the fact that it takes place in May and the descriptions again, the novel and story as a whole is quite heavy historical fiction to do with military upheaval and a lot of conflicting relationships. I just like reading books in the perfect environment, and so that one is set in May, so I highly recommend reading it in May. But I also want to recommend you The Old Man and the Sea. This was my first Ernest Hemingway book. Oh, he's right there. Like, really trying to not be distracted by the landscapers, and I'm just getting distracted by the landscapers. He's riding on top one of those lawnmowers on wheels, and I've always wanted to ride on one of those. They look like so much fun. I already enjoy mowing the lawn because I just think it's so meditative, but every time I see someone riding on one of the like drivable lawnmowers, I kind of want to join. It's like a go-kart that's productive, you know? Do you see this? This leaf is attacking me. As I was saying, The Old Man and the Sea. This is, I think, the first Hemingway I ever read in high school, and I genuinely loved it when I read it in high school. And it's a wonderful story, classic. It's about a man who has a vendetta against a marlin, right? It's not a swordfish. I think he's a marlin. Yes, it is a marlin, and as I was reading the inside flap, this is fascinating. I forgot about this. I knew this, but I forgot. It says, the last of his novels Ernest Hemingway saw published, The Old Man and the Sea has proved to be one of the most enduring works of American fiction. The story of a down-on-his-luck Cuban fisherman and his supreme ordeal, a restless, agonizing battle with a giant marlin far out in the Gulf Stream, has been cherished by generations of readers. Using the simple, powerful language of a fable, Hemingway takes the timeless themes of courage in the face of adversity and personal triumph won from loss, and transforms them into a magnificent 20th century classic. First published in 1952, this hugely popular tale confirmed his power and presence in the literary world and played a large part in his winning the 1954 Nobel Prize in Literature. This edition is also amazing. It is from Scribner, who has been Hemingway's publisher for years. I think they published his first book, if I'm correct, but it has his handwritten manuscript pages as the end papers. It also has photos that relate to the story and photos of some of the typewritten pages of the manuscript and of Hemingway and the original cover, if you can see right there. But this book is, like it says, an absolute classic and perfect for this time of year or summer as well. This could either be a spring and summer book. I feel like For Whom the Bell Tolls is a bit more spring and this one is a bit more summer. I think the landscapers are almost done and I'm nearly done with my video. So terrible timing on my part and I will never be filming on Wednesday again. But my second to last book that I want to tell you about is Devotions by Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver is one of my favorite poets and I'm sure you can imagine and are not surprised to know that she writes about nature. All of her poems are really a love letter to the world, but especially the natural world. She writes about plants and trees and animals in such a beautiful way, and I love reading her poetry in spring and summer, also throughout the whole year, because I think that she is kind of a universal poet, but I especially love reading her in spring and summer, so I can't recommend her poetry enough. Now, the last author I want to recommend you, I don't have one specific book to recommend you, but just the author as a whole. That is L.M. Montgomery. So I have her Anne of Green Gables box set here. I also have the Emily of New Moon books here, and I have the Blue Castle right on top. I really recommend reading at least one of the Anne of Green Gables books in spring or summer because her writing, the descriptions, the scenery, you can tell how much Ellen Montgomery loves, like Mary Oliver and so many of these other writers, she just loves the world, the way that she describes it, the way that she puts the characters into the world, and it's just so beautiful, and I can't recommend reading Ellen Montgomery in spring more. Highly, highly recommend it. And then my new all-time favorite is The Blue Castle. I adore this book with every fiber of my being, and I will never stop recommending it. And like the Anne of Green Gables series, the way that Ellen Montgomery writes about the setting is just exquisite, and I love this book. Please read it. So many of you have been messaging me that you read it and it's a new all-time favorite and you wouldn't have read it without my recommending it, so I am thrilled to hear that and so glad that so many of you are enjoying it. I hope you found some good recommendations in this video. I am so sorry I have been extremely distracted by these landscapers. I hope you can't hear as loudly as I can. Now that I am done, I think they have finished, which is just fantastic. I really love these. I would love to know if you've read any of them, what you think of them, and what your recommendations are. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I can't wait to continue reading my current springtime reads, and I'm excited to recommend you some books in a month or two for summer. So I will see you very soon in another video. I hope you're having a fantastic day reading some amazing books, and as always, happy reading.